훈이 집 맞습니까?
엄마 죽었는데요.
This man is an elite assassin, but in a twist of fate, he meets the love of his life, and she still believes he is just an ordinary office worker, while in front of her, he continues to hide his true identity as a killer. The man's name is Hyun-do. Every day he followed the same strict routine like a regular office worker, living a monotonous life. But the company he worked for hid a dangerous secret. On the surface, it looked like just another ordinary office building, with employees doing their usual work, but in reality, the company had a hidden floor filled with target information and endless weapons and ammunition. Each employee followed their own daily rhythm, and on the outside, they looked no different from ordinary people. So, in the elevator you take every day, the person standing beside you might not be just a normal worker, but could in fact be a professional assassin. At this moment, you must never casually say the wrong words in the elevator, otherwise you might bring danger upon yourself. That day, Hyun-do received a new mission, to eliminate a fellow part-time assassin named Ra-hoon. But Ra-hoon, sitting in the car, was completely unaware of what was about to happen. He was still talking to Hyun-do about his dreams, saying he wanted to earn money so that his mother would not have to work so hard every day, and he spoke freely about his hopes for the future. After speaking, he started his very first mission, with the target being a high-profile individual under heavy protection, disguised as a delivery worker. Ra-hoon arrived at the door, and the police standing guard clearly found his sudden appearance suspicious.
내려가요, 부장님.
Ra-hoon himself did not expect that the one who would end his life would be the person he trusted most. But before dying, Ra-hoon made one last request, asking Hyun-do to deliver his savings to his mother. And so, this led to the opening scene, Hyun-do bringing the money to Ra-hoon's mother. After defeating a group of thugs, Ra-hoon's mother, Mi-yeon, came out. Seeing her, Hyun-do politely greeted her.
훈이의 어머님 되시죠? 부탁을 받아서요.
우리 훈이가요?
네, 일하면서 모아둔 거랍니다. 급히 해외 출장 가게 됐거든요.
Curious, Mi-yeon opened the bag, only to find it filled with money. So, Mi-yeon invited Hyun-do into her home as a guest. Hyun-do handed her his business card, making her believe he was just a legitimate company employee. But little did Hyun-do know, that very card would later bring him great danger. In her innocence, Mi-yeon casually asked Hyun-do how Ra-hoon was doing at work. Hyun-do was usually not talkative, but strangely, in front of Mi-yeon, he found himself speaking more than usual, though most of what he said were lies. Mi-yeon didn't suspect a thing. At that moment, Mi-yeon's daughter spoke up angrily, saying Ra-hoon was always too busy, even on the day of their father's funeral. Then she stormed off, saying she wanted to sing. Mi-yeon tried to stop her, reminding her there was a guest, but the rebellious daughter refused to listen, declaring, "If Mi-yeon could dream of being a singer when she was young, then why can't I?" and went into her room to play music. Seeing this, Mi-yeon tried to discipline her daughter, but the moment the music played, Hyun-do froze because that song was his childhood favorite, the one that had kept him company every night when he delivered food. And only then did he realize that Mi-yeon was actually his childhood idol singer. Back at home, Hyun-do took out the old tape again, listening to her songs through sleepless nights, as feelings began to stir in his heart. The next morning, Hyun-do almost arrived late to work, still lost in that music, but the company's boss, Representative John, did not pay much attention, because Hyun-do was one of the most promising men in the organization, and he intended to cultivate him carefully. So, Representative John brought Hyun-do into the records room, assigning him his next task, to eliminate the fugitive Jin Chae-kook. The reason was that Jin Chae-kook's wife and child had been killed in a car accident, and after he made the taxi driver responsible disappear, he vanished as well. Looking through the file, Hyun-do remembered when Jin Chae-kook had once introduced him to his son, a young genius at the game of Go. Meanwhile, Jin Chae-kook stared blankly at a boy in an arcade, as if he was seeing his own son again. When the staff told him to leave, he violently beat the staff member. After leaving the arcade, he was followed closely by Hyun-do. Step by step, But at a corner, Jin Chaikuk suddenly drew his gun and aimed it at Hyun-do because a man with a killer's instinct could never fail to notice he was being followed. Hyun-do told him that the company wanted him to return, but Jin Chaikuk refused, saying he had given his life to the company for years. Now with his family destroyed, he would never go back to serve them again, and he asked Hyun-do to deliver a final message to the company.
그만둔다고.
The next time Hyun-do woke up, he was already back at headquarters, and Kwon Jong-tae questioned him about what had happened, because Hyun-do had never failed before. This was the first time, so Kwon demanded an explanation, but Hyun-do, always quiet, gave no excuse, only repeating "I'm sorry." Kwon Jong-tae had long grown impatient with this attitude. Back in his office, Hyun-do suddenly received a call. When he arrived, it turned out to be a massage parlor, and inside was Ra-hoon, alive. It turned out that Hyun-do hadn't killed him because he admired him and wanted to recommend him to the recruits department, but Kwon Jong-tae refused and ordered Ra-hoon to be eliminated. Ra-hoon couldn't understand why Hyun-do treated him that way, or why the company wanted him dead, but all Hyun-do could say was, he was just a part-timer. Meanwhile, the company had already planned their next mission, with each member taking their role, one to study the target's routine, another to cut the surveillance, Hyun-do and a partner to pressure the target into fleeing, then a female assassin waiting in the elevator, and finally the cleaners disposing of the body. The whole process was so seamless it seemed like nothing unusual had happened, and for them, such missions were as casual as eating or drinking, and because Hyun-do had escorted Ra-hoon home, he shared another meal with Mi-yeon's family. At the table, Hyun-do looked shy and awkward, like a young man experiencing love for the first time. Mi-yeon's family did not question Ra-hoon's injuries, since Hyun-do explained he had been injured during an overseas assignment. Later that night, they all shared a late meal together, and Hyun-do and Mi-yeon talked casually, with unspoken feelings growing between them, and for the first time in years, Hyun-do felt like he had found something close to a family. But just as he was lost in this warmth, a phone call pulled him back to reality. The company had located Jin Chaikuk again, and ordered Hyun-do to finish the mission. Hyun-do reluctantly accepted. At that moment, Jin Chaikuk was still watching TV, unaware the door behind him was opening. When Hyun-do entered, no words were exchanged, only the sound of fists landing heavy blows. The aging Jin Chaikuk was no match for Hyun-do, and soon Hyun-do pressed a gun to his head, asking why he didn't run when he had the chance. Jin Chaikuk said his whole life had been walking the line between darkness and light, taking countless lives, his hands forever stained. Now, he no longer wished to live, and begged Hyun-do to end it quickly, and Hyun-do pulled the trigger. After this, the company congratulated him, organizing a team celebration, and at the banquet, they officially gave Jin Chaikuk's position to Hyun-do. For the first time, Hyun-do felt like sharing his joy, and for the first time, he had someone to share it with Mi-yeon. So, he sent her a message, asking if she was free that weekend, and their first date began. Their first stop was a cafe, where the owner invited Mi-yeon and said she wanted to sell the place, explaining that she no longer had the energy to manage it. Mi-yeon longed to have the cafe, but she knew she didn't have the money, so she gently declined. What she didn't know was that Hyun-do overheard every word. The cafe owner teased that Mi-yeon now had a good man by her side, and then asked what Hyun-do did for a living.
그냥 회사원.
Afterward, the two sat down and enjoyed their coffee together, and Hyun-do also revealed that Mi-yeon was his idol, asking why she no longer sang. This only made Mi-yeon shy, so the two of them spent this quiet and happy time together in an ambiguous atmosphere. But what they did not know was that behind this calm, a storm was quietly brewing, because at the scene of Ra-hoon's assassination, several police officers and an important witness had already died. So the police quickly launched an investigation, and the first person they focused on was naturally Ra-hoon, who appeared in the surveillance footage. Since they could not find him, the police searched blindly, asking people on the street if they had seen the man in the photo. Clearly, the two officers in front of them were only making routine inquiries, but just as they turned around, at this moment, Hyun-do was walking Mi-yeon home, but one of the police officers, looking at Hyun-do's face, suddenly remembered that on the day of the incident, he seemed to have seen Hyun-do's figure, so he immediately stepped forward to question him.
저기요.
무슨 일이시죠?
이건데요. 술 드셨어요?
아니요.
아이고, 술 냄새가 나는데 면허증 좀 보여주세요.
This scene clearly left Hyun-do speechless, but with Mi-yeon watching, he had no choice but to calmly hand over his ID for Kwon Jong-tae to check.
안 나왔는데요.
무슨 회사요?
Just as Hyun-do answered, an ordinary office worker, Mi-yeon handed the officer his business card, which had his company information printed on it. Seeing this, Hyun-do could only remain silent. Yet trouble came again before the first wave even settled. Jin Chae-kook had actually been spared by Hyun-do and allowed to leave Korea. But before leaving, he wanted to visit the memorial tablets of his wife and child. And unfortunately, he was spotted on camera by the company, so Hyun-do was summoned to meet Representative John inside the hidden floor of the company. When he arrived, sitting in the center was none other than Jin Chae-kook, who had already been captured. Representative John questioned Hyun-do about what had happened, saying, "Since it is work, you must finish it." As he spoke, Kwon Jong-tae handed Hyun-do a pen. Seeing this, Hyun-do knew that Jin Chae-kook was doomed, and Jin Chae-kook, fully aware of his fate, spoke out about the true nature of the company.
니들 머리에 뭐가 들었냐? 일이랍시고 이제를 하고는 집에 가면 피곤해 하고 처자. 그리고 날 밝으면 회사 가야지 옷 주워 입고 또 이지랄해. 좋냐? 행복해?
Hearing this, Hyun-do fell silent, and Jin Chae-kook told him something, saying that Hyun-do should be able to understand clearly. Jin Chae-kook was warning Hyun-do not to sink too deep into this world, but Hyun-do said nothing. He only took the pen, pulled it apart to reveal a hidden wire, and strangled Jin Chae-kook. It was clear that at this moment, Hyun-do had already drawn the deep displeasure of the company's upper ranks. Trouble soon followed. Once again, the police tracked down the company through the information on Hyun-do's business card. Although the two officers who entered thought it was just an ordinary company and saw nothing unusual, Hyun-do's situation was not so simple because Kwon Jong-tae had already found him and demanded to know why he had given his card to the police, asking him to explain. But Hyun-do's mouth always repeated only three words, "I'm sorry." So, Kwon Jong-tae, who had already disliked Hyun-do, when he heard these words again, the anger in his chest could no longer be contained, and he beat Hyun-do furiously, while Hyun-do did not fight back at all. After Hyun-do left, he thought the matter had passed, and began going on more dates with Mi-yeon, but little did he know, Kwon Jong-tae was still stirring up trouble. He had found new evidence, proof that Ra-hoon had not been silenced by Hyun-do, and even photos of Hyun-do dating Mi-yeon. Seeing this, Representative John said nothing more, but now he knew Hyun-do could not be kept because once an assassin has feelings, he will no longer be the sharpest blade. So the next day, while still at work, Hyun-do was taken by two colleagues to a supposed mission location, but while in the car, Hyun-do realized they were not taking the usual route. The woman driving explained, "That road is jammed," but Hyun-do insisted she head straight into the traffic jam instead. Hearing this, the woman had no choice but to obey Hyun-do's order. Although the car fell silent, everyone knew that behind this calm was nothing but the prelude to a coming storm. So when they reached the next intersection, Hyun-do finally revealed his suspicion, and the tension in the car instantly solidified into something real.
네가 해고시킬 수 있을 것 같냐?
This was clearly not what Hyun-do had expected, but since things had already escalated, he knew that neither he nor Mi-yeon's family was safe anymore, so he called Ra-hoon, telling him to quickly take Mi-yeon and her family away, and that he would pick them up afterward. Hoon hurriedly took her and her daughter away, then brought them to Hyun-do's car. Mi-yeon frantically asked, "What's going on?" But neither man knew how to explain, because it was impossible to admit the truth about being assassins, so Hyun-do could only keep driving, heading toward the home of a former senior colleague, Ban Ji-hoon. Ban Ji-hoon was someone Hyun-do deeply respected, one of the few who had actually left the company through proper channels. After sending Mi-yeon and her family into the house, Ban Ji-hoon came outside and questioned Hyun-do, "Why did you bring all this trouble on yourself?" He blamed the situation on Hyun-doo's reckless work. Hyun-doo then revealed his plan. He wanted to leave this life behind and settle down in Seoul. But just then, Mi-eun confronted him, saying she knew Ra-hoon's injuries could not possibly be from a work accident, and she asked Hyun-doo to tell her the truth. At that moment, Hyun-doo realized he could no longer hide it, so he confessed everything. The company that looked like an ordinary hardware supplier was in fact a front, a secret organization that trained professional assassins. He was one of its top killers, and Ra-hoon had only been a part-timer. Learning the truth, Mi-eun returned to her room in shock, her eyes empty, clearly unable to process the weight of such information as just an ordinary woman. Meanwhile, Hyun-doo set off back to his own place, because all his savings were hidden in a pipe beneath his home. But he also knew the company would certainly search his house carefully, and spies were likely stationed in every corner nearby. And sure enough, whether inside his car or around his apartment, Representative John's informants were everywhere. But as the company's ace assassin, Hyun-doo's counter-surveillance skills were formidable, and there was no way a few ordinary operatives could spot him. Through a series of feints and clever misdirections, he slipped past their watch and reached the storage area, retrieving his hidden savings. Yet just when he thought he was one step closer to freedom, disaster struck upon returning to Ban Ji-hoon's home. He realized Ban Ji-hoon had betrayed him, and he himself had become the prey. At that moment, Hyun-doo couldn't understand why Ban Ji-hoon would do this, but Ban Ji-hoon gave him the cruel answer, showing what it meant to survive in a treacherous world. If I don't step on you, I'll be stepped on. He wanted to return to the company, and for that, he needed proof of loyalty. Hyun-doo and his companions were the perfect bargaining chip, and Ban Ji-hoon had already submitted his reinstatement request. The company had approved it. Seeing this, Hyun-doo knew that nothing he said would change the outcome, so he begged Ban Ji-hoon to let Mi-eun go, offering to give him all the money instead. But that was clearly not what Ban Ji-hoon wanted, and with the butt of his gun he struck Hyun-doo, forcing him to his knees in pain. Mi-eun, Ra-hoon, and her daughter trembled in fear at the sight, having never witnessed such violence in their entire lives. After knocking Hyun-doo to the ground, Ban Ji-hoon pointed his gun toward Mi-eun and the others. This act shattered Hyun-doo's last shred of respect. He had not fought back, because he respected the senior and had given him every chance. But since Ban Ji-hoon remained stubborn, Hyun-doo decided to unleash his full strength in retaliation. Clearly, Ban Ji-hoon was no match for Hyun-doo, but before Hyun-doo could act, chaos erupted, and Mi-eun was accidentally shot. Terrified, Hyun-doo rushed to check on her, but it was already too late. Mi-eun's death left Hyun-doo completely broken, and the assassin's heart he had tried to suppress finally exploded with fury. In anger and despair, Hyun-doo resolved to take his revenge against the company. The next day, he quickly armed himself, put on a bulletproof vest, and set off alone for the company's headquarters. Inside the company, every employee received a file, which contained the weapons assigned to them. It was clear that everyone there felt the tension, understanding exactly what those weapons meant. Meanwhile, Hyun-doo, just like any other workday, took the 9-to-5 elevator, step by step arriving at the reception desk, asking where Representative John was. The woman at the desk dared not answer, but Hyun-doo was no fool. Since she chose to play games, he saw no reason to spare her life. After eliminating her, he entered the office, searching for Representative John. All his colleagues stared at him intently, knowing that an unprecedented storm was about to erupt in this silence. Under the cover of a fire extinguisher, the staff lost their composure. Just as they prepared to move in, Hyun-doo snatched up a gun from the floor and opened fire on the crowd. After clearing them out, Hyun-doo descended into the hidden floor, where guards were waiting, and one slashed him with a knife. The two clashed violently, but though the guard had a blade, Hyun-doo's reputation as the ace assassin was not undeserved. Moments later, the man fell dead from his reckless strike, and Hyun-do finally came face to face with Representative John. Representative John attempted to appeal emotionally, claiming Hyun-do was the man he had placed all his hopes in, but as he spoke, he suddenly drew a gun, trying to shoot Hyun-do, only to be taken out by Ra-hoon, who had quietly followed and fired the fatal shot. With Representative John dead, the two men entered the office, but just as they discussed how to escape the police, Kwon Jong-tae appeared silently behind them. This was something Hyun-do had not anticipated, and Kwon Jong-tae began questioning him, demanding to know why. But Hyun-do was not someone who could be brought down so easily. He pretended to be weak as he walked up to Kwon Jong-tae, then suddenly grabbed the pen Kwon Jong-tae carried, locked it around his neck, and prepared to strangle him, but deciding strangling him would be too easy, Hyun-do shoved Kwon Jong-tae off the building instead, sending him crashing to his death before the shocked crowd below. Hyun-do then told Ra-hoon to escape, choosing to take responsibility for everything himself. Covered in blood, he walked out alone, while everyone stared in horror, their eyes wide with disbelief. And this was the choice Hyun-do finally made for himself to accept the punishment of the law.